Hey guys, Caleb here with DSLR Video Shooter, and today we're talking about 5 different ways to monitor audio on cameras that don't have a headphone jack. We've all been there, and some of us are still there. You have an awesome camera, you love it, it's amazing, except for there's no headphone jack. So many cameras fall into that range of, you know, it's a nice camera, it does so much for us, but if we put a headphone jack in it, it is going to compete with other cameras, so we're going to cut that out completely. And that's where cameras like the A6500, A6300, G85, and so many other cameras are sitting. So today we're going to work around that, several different solutions and varying safety levels, if you will. So the first and one of the easiest ways to make this work and get some added benefits and bonuses when it comes to monitoring is to use a monitor. So here I have a $105, I believe, 5-inch little monitor from Viltrox. I'll have a link in the description. Is it the greatest monitor ever? Absolutely not, but it's really small and lightweight. I can even remove the little hood to have this cute little darling monitor. So I'm gonna drop that hood down there. I'm gonna plug this into my camera, just like so, fire up the monitor, and guess what? On the bottom of this thing, we have a little headphone jack. So I'm gonna go ahead, plug this puppy in, if I can find the end of my cable, which I just dropped. Hook it into the monitor itself, and then in the menu system of the monitor there is a volume level control, and guess what? Now I can hear myself and it works really well. Now this solution isn't perfect. It's going to sound pretty crappy on this monitor and several others, but you'll still be able to hear when things peak and distort to make sure your audio levels aren't outrageous. Also, this method might be a little laggy and you'll have some latency there, but again, you're going to get something and hear something out of the camera. Solution number 2 is somewhat similar to the first one, but let's say, Caleb, I don't have $100 to throw at a monitor just so I can use my headphones. Well, that's where these little adapters come into play. These are HDMI to VGA adapters. And if you think about it, HDMI carries audio, VGA doesn't. So if you have one of these adapters for your computer, you need a way to get the audio to continue on past the VGA point. So these little adapters go from HDMI to VGA, but on the side they have a little 3.5 millimeter jack. So that's where we can get that headphone action. Now I have 2 here. One is a micro HDMI straight to VGA all in one, and it also has that little headphone jack. This one is great because this is all you need. It's around 15-20 bucks and you're done. The only thing I don't like is the cable is really rigid and puts a lot of strain on your camera. So another option is this guy right here. This is a male full HDMI to VGA with that little headphone jack on it. You can see it is tiny, really, really small, smaller than my thumb. And to attach that to the camera, I have a small micro HDMI to full HDMI adapter, and it's an angled one so it'll hang off of the camera nicely. So this is a little more of an elegant solution, costs about the same. Either one is going to work. So to set this one up, I am going to take my little baby adapter here and the angled adapter. I'll have links to these in the description. I'm going to plug it into my camera. Normally I have my camera in a cage, and then this thing I just kind of attach like that so it's on top of the cage. And in this orientation, the headphone jack is facing me, which is awesome. I'm going to now grab my ridiculously long cable that I keep dropping, plug it in, check 1, 2. Wow, sounds great. Actually, this is very loud, surprisingly. Now, a couple things with this. Let me go ahead and unplug this because I'm hearing myself even without wearing the headphones. If you use this setup, you're like, oh, this is so good, this is awesome. But then when you hit record, and if you're on 4K on any of the smaller cameras from Sony, your screen goes black. You still see your settings, but you can't see anything. So to solve that, this is what you have to do. Again, this is if you're shooting 4K, not 1080. You need to go into your menu system, go over to the second tab, and on the first page, go down to dual record and turn it on. This is going to, I talked about this in my guide, it essentially creates a lower res file. Not super useful, but in this scenario, guess what happens when we now hit record? We can still see our image, and we can use our headphones with this little adapter. The only downside is it's going to create extra files on your SD card, They're small, they're not huge, so that's not a big deal, but it might eat up your battery life a little faster. But this is the cheapest, probably most minimal way to get a headphone jack on your camera. Sounds much better than that monitor I used, and obviously it doesn't take that much to get set up. All right, guys, option number 3. Yes, number 3, and that is to use some kind of preamp or external audio interface to have a headphone jack. Now, these are kind of a step up from the previous setups. The previous setups will work fine if you're vlogging or even shooting semi-professionally and its audio isn't critical. But if you're sitting down to record somebody and you only got one shot for it, you really need to up your game when it comes to audio. That's where something like this will come into play, and our next 2 setups. So this is a Beach Tech audio adapter, amazingly clean preamps, gives you several inputs, XLR, 3.5mm, safety track creation, so much good stuff with this. It also has a headphone jack, and what's awesome about this one over most other audio adapters is that it has a amp for the headphones and a little knob to control it. So this device will get you much closer to a professional level setup, but it's still not perfectly safe because we're not listening to the final recorded audio. We're listening to a preamp with an amplifier. So that brings us to our final setup, which is, guess what? Using an audio recorder. So yes, audio recorder is the safest way to work around not having a headphone jack. It can be finicky. I'm going to talk about a way to make it very seamless and you won't even use your recorder, but you still will, just so stay with me on that one. But again, simplest setup, plug a microphone into this, record on here, you got a headphone jack on the side, bam, you're listening to what's being recorded, which is crucial for proper audio. That's really it. There's so many out there. This one is awesome. This is from Zoom. It's $100. Bam, you're in the game, all the way up to something like my Sound Devices Mix Pre 3. So the final setup for monitoring on your camera that doesn't have a headphone jack is again to use a recorder, but use it a little differently. So what you want to do is plug your microphone into your recorder. Doesn't matter what model it is or what microphone you're using. You plug it into your recorder, then you send an output from the recorder to your camera. And if you're using a little recorder like this that only has one headphone output, you can get a splitter that will let you still use your headphones on the recorder and send an output to your camera. The idea with this is we're doing dual system sound in that there's 2 devices recording sound separately. We're also doing single system sound because our audio is ending up on our camera. And what I love about the setup is this. When you sit down to edit, you're going to import your footage from your camera and you're going to input the sound from your recorder. If the sound that you recorded with your camera that came from this recorder is good, you're done. Just go ahead and start editing and you don't have to worry about audio anymore. But if something went real janky on the camera and the audio got messed up, you've been monitoring your recorder and you can use this audio. Great system. It saves you from having to sync sound with video in post if everything went well, but it's still an awesome backup. And even if I'm using a camera that has a headphone jack, usually that's the one I'm using if it's mission critical type audio. So final things with that is you're going to want to think about levels. Set your levels on your recorder to be just perfect and then work on and focus on the levels on your camera. But keep in mind that the recorder trumps all, so that should be where your settings are perfectly dialed in. So these tips will hopefully help you out next time you're having to deal with audio with such cameras. Let me know in the comments below if you thought this video was interesting and helpful, and if you have any tips for monitoring audio on cameras without a headphone jack. Otherwise, guess what? You can watch fresh videos here at DSLR Video Shooter every single week. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.